so that you don't have to keep doing it all the time.
Shutting it off.
Oh, so that's I can quiet you down?
Are you shutting everybody off?
Okay, I think we're all here. It's 1 o'clock, so I don't have a gavel, but call the meeting to order. Do I need to do anything else other than that for these things? Get them going?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't really have much to say. We've all introduced ourselves this morning. If anybody has anything they'd like to add, this would be, I guess, a good time. But otherwise, I'm just going to introduce Mickey and let him go forth. Is that all right? I guess I'll welcome our new members. Representative Kelly and Representative DeRoy, who are new to the House, and, well, not really new to the House, but sort of new to the House, and new to Finance Committee. So welcome to both of you. Happy to have you. And I'll turn it over to you, Mickey. Mr. Landrigan.
Thank you, Representative. For the record, my name is Mickey Landrigan. You see it listed as Mick Landrigan here or there. My real name's Michael. Mickey's fine. You can call me that. I've been with the office for almost 18 years now. I've been doing budget work since the 2011 session was my first budget. So, and that first year I was with Division 1. Every year since I've been in Division 2. So this has become pretty familiar territory for me. Most of the members here were here last year with Division 2. I know we have 2 brand new members. Representative Kelly's not brand new to the House. She knows the, very familiar, so it's good to see her. But yeah, I can get right into it. I don't know if you wanted to, at some point today, talk about just how the division runs differently from how the full committee as we're a subcommittee, and I can kind of assist with that before we get into anything else. So this is a subcommittee of House Finance. So a lot of the same procedures are followed, but it is much more informal than across the way. So all this committee will do is essentially give recommendations to the full committee for exec. We don't have exec sessions in here. We don't have public hearings in here. Any public in.
So just a question on that, because I know you and I talked about this, and that's what you said. But again, this morning, Chairman Weiler said, I think you were still there when he said we'll have full public hearings here, and then they'll go to the committees.
He used the term hearings. I think he probably meant meetings. We won't have public hearings in here. We'll have work sessions in here on bills and, of course, on House Bill 1 and 2, like the budget.
But just for the 2 new members, we do vote in here.
We do vote.
You vote in Division 2, don't you?
We do.
Okay.
We vote to make recommendations, correct? So the bills will be referred to us after the full committee has the public hearing. We'll schedule a work session on those bills on those days. And then, yeah, we'll vote on, same motions, an ought to pass, retain, ITL, whatever, and recommend that back to the full committee, at which a motion will be made in the full committee, which is what the division recommended, and then the official vote will be in the full committee. Let's see.
Yeah.
Eventually I'll remember.
Just to, I guess, historically, just to put it out there for new members and let me know, Chair, if you will agree. We've always been open to having testimony or hearings from, the public, that they've always been able to participate and, give their perspective on things, and we've been able to listen to them. That's been the way it's been since I've been on finance, and just to iterate that, hopefully that will continue.
That's fine with me, but give me a heads up that when you're wanting to do that. Well, we did Division 3 too, but we didn't just like let anybody rip up there and start shooting the breeze. We would. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the point from a technical perspective. I'm saying, like, the public will always have a public hearing on all pieces of legislation, including the budget. House Bill 1 and 2 will have its own separate public hearing. And then when it comes to division work, when we're doing work sessions, that's the prerogative of the committee, of the chair, to invite whomever, agency folks, advocates, lobbyists, public, to input. But that would be up to the committee to decide who and when and for how long. So I'm trying to think of other just general Division 2 procedural things. I believe Representative DeRoy is our clerk. Just-
Representative DeRoy, where does that stand? Thank you. Yes, Representative.
I just wanted to add my thanks to Representative DeRoy for agreeing to serve as a clerk, especially as a first term member, first term on finance and stuff. But we'll offer all the support that you need. Thank you.
I want to be able to focus on what's being said rather than trying to interpret what was being said. So I'll need all of your help
And
and patience.
so tap him if you want me to slow down, because I talk quickly, but I'm glad to slow down whenever. I have no problem with that.
And as far as record keeping, to that point, all the meetings will be recorded and streamed on YouTube. The microphones are important because the audio will not pick it up if you're not speaking into a microphone. It is a small room, and we can hear each other, but nothing will be picked up on the stream unless we're in a microphone. So that's important to just remember to flip it on every time we're speaking. As far as scheduling, as of right now, you probably all got the notices that we do have some agency presentations coming up. Next week we're open, starting the week of the 27th. We'll have higher education on that day, Monday the 27th, fishing game safety and DOT the 29th, and then that following week we'll have 2 separate days of Department of Education to come in to talk about some state aid programs. The purpose of these, go ahead.
Just one moment. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that kind of information, you don't need to take notes because that's in the calendar. Okay, so you'll kind of learn what you don't need to bother writing down. Go ahead.
Actually,
Push the thing.
I went to see Janet, and she's going to give me samples of what has been done in the past so that I can take those home with me and kind of study them and see what's important in the group. But if
Great.
somebody has something special they want written down.
For today, I think all you have to do is state that our LBA, Mr. Landrigan, provided us an overview of the procedures for the committee and the overview of what we're going to be doing. That's probably enough.
Pretty much the time we start, the time we end.
Yeah, we started at 1 o'clock on the nose.
So the purpose of those initial hearings is really to familiarize our new members with some of the subjects in the agencies you'll be dealing with, as well as a refresher for the returning members. It's a meet and greet. There may be some new people at the departments that weren't there 2 years ago. And it's good to get some exposure and some information prior to when the budget is handed to us. I think just getting a little bit of a head start, it just helps and makes us more efficient in the time that we do have. And speaking of the time we do have, I did, not to panic anybody, so I did do a count of how many days. I do have March 26th is what we should target, as it's Wednesday, March 26th, as the target date to have the division done all of its recommendations, be done all of its work. And that will include House Bill 1 and 2, as well as any other bills that get referred to us. As of right now, only 5 bills have been referred to finance, and none of them are Division 2, which is good. So we have nothing to start, but at some point we will get possibly still first committee bills, but definitely second committee bills that we'll have to work on. So between February 18th, which is the Monday following the holiday weekend when the budget comes out, until the 26th, including the 26th, there's 27 business days in there. Whether we have a break or not, that could be 5 or up to 5, the school vacation week. Last year during that period, there were 6 house session days. So those are 6 days we're not going to have. 1 day is town meeting day. And 1 day we will have a public hearing on House Bill 1 and 2. So those are ones we know of. That brings us down to 14 days, plus or minus the vacation week. But then we'll also have public hearings on other bills. We'll also have work sessions on other bills we're going to get. So the amount of time that we have is somewhat limited. So we just need to remember to be as efficient as we can with the days we have.
Representative G. Muller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Which is why I would, suggest, like we always do, that we front load our meetings as we've been doing and continue to be aggressive in front loading them, because anything we can take care of in terms of general background before we have the actual budget and start working on the numbers would be, work out of the way, and then we can focus on the hard part.
And I should just add something here. We talked about the agency budgets, but we didn't talk about that. But I think we briefly mentioned that this morning, and then the governor's budget. The agency budgets are currently available online. So those can be downloaded electronically, and they provide the information about what the agencies have requested based on what Governor Sununu, previous Governor Sununu, had suggested last summer when they started their process of looking at a 4% budget cut. So if you want to get a heads up on the budget, you can actually start looking at them. They're available.
No, it's a great point. The agency budget requests have also last year's actual expenditures, this current year's authorized budget, as well as like what the agencies are requesting for the next 2 years, and a lot of narrative in there about separate programs, different accounting units. So especially for the new members, it's a massive document, but you could hone in on just our Division 2 agencies and probably learn a little bit to get ready for when the budget does come to us. In addition, all of the agencies did do a presentation to the governor's budget director and some staff relative to those budget requests, and all of them had a handout. So those handouts are also posted online, and I'll email that link to the committee, and those are good, useful documents to just kind of familiarize yourself with, just to do a little homework on your own.
And in fact, if you download the PDF version of the agency budget requests, those also include not just it doesn't look just like HB1, but it also has a bunch of related notes that go with every one of the different categories that you can read about if you want to know why they think they're doing things.
So that's kind of what the outlook is as far as scheduling. Kind of back to what our office can provide and does provide. So Mike Kane went through it this morning. I won't dive into all that again. But as far as for Division 2, I'm your analyst. So I'm your guy. I'll be in here every day we're meeting. I will be in the full committee when we have public hearings or exec sessions on bills that will be assigned to Division 2. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. Our contact information was there, even if it's for new members to understand something or experienced members to dive into a bill or whatever, anything, just reach out to me. Amendments too, that came up this morning. There's going to be a lot of amendments for House Bill 2. You may want to draft an amendment for one of the bills that's in our committee. Just, I can assist with that. If I've found it's just easier to, if I'm part of that process, I can just kind of keep everything focused and make sure nothing falls through the cracks for the committee. That kind of covers most of that. Does anyone have any questions either from this morning's presentation that you were sitting on or so far here?
Wow. This committee is well prepared.
So I did hand out a couple documents. Nothing is brand new. It's stuff that's either been online or even was part of your packet this morning. One is the kind of a lot of numbers, the agency budget requests, high level department totals. And we'll start with that one. So what I've done here is just highlighted our agencies. So in Division 2, we'll be responsible for the Department of Safety, the Fish and Game Department, the Department of Transportation, Department of Education, the Lottery Commission, the Police Standards and Training, and the University System of New Hampshire and the Community College System of New Hampshire. So in a nutshell, safety, fishing game, transportation, education. So we don't have a whole lot of agencies, but we have a lot of money and a lot of programs within those agencies. We don't, if you look on the first page, this is all funds. It's the front and back of that first page. And then if you look on the next one, it's just general funds only. We don't have a ton of general funds in Division 2. Once you back out the higher education, university, and the community college system, we don't have a ton of general funds appropriated within Division 2. That said, we have a lot of education trust funds, a lot of highway funds, turnpike funds, federal funds, restricted accounts, fish and game funds. So that's one of the nuances of Division 2 is there's a lot of different fund types.
And so just to be clear, especially for the new folks, education trust funds are very similar to general funds from the standpoint of they're coming from the general taxes and things that we collect. There's some special things that go into the education trust fund, and there's limitations on what the education trust funds can be used for. But they're different from federal funds. They're different from your highway funds, which is the tolls or the gas tax.
The road toll,
The highway fund?
The highway fund is the road toll, which is also the gas tax. Yeah. And
Okay.
then the turnpike fund is the toll booths.
Yeah.
So that's, it's,
So those are sort of special, but in terms of education trust funds, just so you're familiar with it, they're similar to general funds in terms of where they come from, but they have some restrictions on the education trust funds in terms of what they can be used for.
so like I said, I gave you this just as a reference, just so it's clear which agencies we will be looking at, which budgets we'll be looking at. The next document I handed out, I'm not even going to really go into it. That snapshot that our office presented to the Ways and Means Committee at the joint economic briefing earlier this week. That's just for your reference in case you didn't already see that. Many of you probably have or know the number, but that's a document that's going to change almost daily. It's already different from when we publish it Monday. So as revenues are coming in, as spending occurs, as the annual comprehensive financial report is audited and finalized, those numbers are going to move around. And then the third document I gave you, this is one that you'll see somewhat routinely, at least the last page of it. So this is the final packet of recommendations from House Finance Division 2 from 2 years ago. So this was the House Bill 1 and 2 recommendations that this committee made. And it kind of gives you a glimpse of the tracking sheets that we will use here that I'll update every time we meet, essentially with the recommendations made to date and the pending recommendations that you still have to figure out. So for this first page is essentially just all the sections from House Bill 1, the back of House Bill 1, and House Bill 2. So last year when House Bill 2 was introduced, 80 some odd sections of the bill were referred to Division 2. So each one of those, this committee will have to go through and decide, do you like it? Do you want to support it? Do you want to delete it? Do you want to amend it? So all of those, this committee will have to vote on. And back to votes, typically it's a show of hands in here, but we definitely have done roll calls too. And that's up to the chair to decide, or the committee to collectively decide on whatever the issue is, how you want to do a vote. So just to kind of show you this document here, I'll give you this when we get a new House Bill 2 in a month or so. And then all of these columns on the far right, the action column will be blank when we start. And then as we start making decisions, we'll start checking off some of these boxes. If you flip to the next page, if you look down below, this is where many of our bills that came to the committee, how they were added to House Bill 2. So for instance, down at the bottom under the other House Bill 2 amendments, there was a bill, House Bill 542, that was referred to this committee relative to establishing a position at the Department of Education. Division 2 supported that. So we amended House Bill 2 to add that language into House Bill 2. So I'll keep track of all of those bills that are referred to us, as well as House Bill 2, just to make sure nothing hopefully falls through the cracks. Flipping to the next page, this is just showing all the decisions that were made in House Bill 1. You're going to get a lot of agency budget requests. They're going to say the governor's budget didn't fund this, or we need these technical changes made, or whatever. As you start making those decisions, and I'll do the data entry into the budget system, which is somewhat time consuming. So some things I may request that you consider early, so that'll give me time. I'll also track these for you so you know how you're doing to date, the decisions you've made, et cetera. to page 2 of that document, and I will keep a running total of all of your actions to date, just to know your overall either spending or cutting or whatever you're doing by fund, because that'll be important. And then speaking of by fund, the next 3 pages of this packet are, we'll call them surplus statements of the education trust fund, the highway fund, and then the fish and game fund. So it's somewhat the responsibility of this division to ensure those 3 funds are balanced in the way that you want to recommend to the full committee. So like I said, this was what Division 2 finalized 2 years ago. So in the case of the education trust fund, all of the revenues up top will be a Ways and Means thing, right? So they're going to come up with the revenue estimates. But all the appropriations down below, that'll be part of your budget package. So when you're determining adequate education, charter schools, school building aid, all those things, we're going to keep an eye on how this is looking for the education trust fund. Any questions to this point? I know it's a lot. I don't want to do a whole lot today, diving in, but.
Representative Popovich Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not as much a question as a note to both Mickey and everybody on the committee. Last budget cycle, we didn't give Fish and Game a humongous amount of time because, they were mostly self-funded and whatnot, and we had a lot of bigger fish to fry. Having been serving, I have served on a statutory committee, Senate House committee to look at the revenue funds and provide recommendations. And some of the things I've learned during that committee, I think, will lead to us having to give a heightened level of scrutiny to Fish and Game than we've done in previous cycles, because they are very insistent on their need to get direct appropriations from the general fund as part of their budget. And that's a very different type of situation than what we've had in the past. So I just wanted to give you a heads up that when we budget for it, when you think about it in terms of workload, that we may have more work there than we had in the past because of that change in circumstances. Thank you.
I actually have an example of the Fish and Game surplus statement here in a couple pages. You can see that. But as far as education, back to that real quick, that is by far the biggest component of this division, in my opinion, because it's a huge dollar amount when you talk about adequacy or education trust fund expenditures between charter schools, adequacy, school building, ADFAs. But it's also, a lot of it's state aid. So that's usually a tough decision to make. This year is a new year that you have a new standing committee in the House, an education funding committee. So a lot of bills, I look back 2 years ago, I think we had 8 bills that were first referred to this committee, that now those types of bills are going to the ed funding committee first. So in theory, House policy should be vetted out on some of those things, and we'll have fewer bills, maybe with a House position on them as they come to this committee. And I know we have 2 members on this division who are also on that committee, so there should be a bridge between the work of both. So that'll be hopefully a little bit less work that's done in this committee, as it should be a policy determined before it comes here. So yes, the highway fund too, that's another one that perennially is, there's a lot of decision making there. There's been a lot of one-time fixes, so to speak, of the highway fund over the years, whether it's, a temporary change in some revenue or using different sources of funds to pay things that the highway fund typically would pay for. I'm expecting to see that budget come to us not super, flush with money, I guess, unless there's, some massive changes, just based on kind of what we've seen the last couple of years. And then Fish and Game Fund, similar thing, but to a smaller total dollar amount. On the next page, you can see that. When the governor's budget comes out, we may or may not have an audited ACFR, but we'll have something, a preliminary draft that we can at least build these surplus statements off of, so you can do your work. Education Trust Fund, Highway Fund, Fish and Game should be pretty good, I would think, by that draft that we'll be using for
So I had a
budget work.
question about the ACFR that I wanted to ask it this morning, but it was kind of busy. Is there any reason we can't get the incomplete version that just doesn't have in the pieces related to lottery?
We probably will for when we start our work February 15th, because the governor, to show that her budget package is balanced, will have to we'll have balancing documents. There's been preliminary drafts that have been given that I think the snapshot was based off of one in November we received was the last one. So we have been getting some preliminary numbers, but knowing that the final number is still coming.
So it's obviously coming to fiscal to request an extension, at least from what I heard this morning.
Yeah.
Can we, on the fiscal committee, dictate that we need to have something released, at least released to the finance committee?
I think a request can be made. I don't know if you can dictate necessarily,
maybe
but we can
dictate's
put a,
the wrong
we can
word.
put a, yeah, we can put a request in and see what the comptroller is able to release as far as a preliminary draft that could be used. But like I said, there's not a ton of use for it for us yet to have it until the governor's budget comes out, and we'll have whatever she uses, which should be in theory the latest and greatest at the time that is available. So we should have something for February 15th.
Okay, thank you.
The last piece of paper in this packet. So this is a list that I'll keep as agencies come in and do their presentation of all of the requests and outstanding items that either the agencies have asked for or that bills that exist. Just kind of and I'll update this every single day that we meet, just so the committee knows what requests were made. And as you start just deciding on them, this one indicates shading. So for instance, the first block of Department of Safety items, you can see the item on row 1 was approved. The next few were not. Item on row 18, 19, 20 were approved. So I'll just keep this as a tracking sheet, as a one pager that this committee can always look to and say, okay, these are the outstanding requests compiled from all of our agencies as we go through.
Representative Popovich Muller.
Thank you. So just to clarify for everybody, Mickey, the dark border around something means that the governor denied that request, but we are being told about the request because it will probably be brought back to us. The lines without the border are the ones that, as of now, the governor seems to be willing to include in her budget.
No, I think the borders here were some of these items had multiple funds, so I dark bordered the total of that request. So if you look at that item, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is actually the same item, but it would affect multiple fund sources. So that's why I have it broken out that way. What the shading represents is an item that Division 2 supported.
Thank you. Thank God I asked.
And then as the budget work goes through, let's use an example. We don't have Department of Justice, or what, I don't want to use a real department, but let's say someone wants to make a cut to a department. The department's not going to come in here and say, can you please cut our budget? Or so if there's any change you want to make to the budget that is not something discussed or request, you can ask me for an amendment, and then I can have a piece of paper drafted, distributed to the committee, and I would add it to that as a representative or amendment or whatever, just so if there's something you want to bring for the committee to consider, I can add it to that list as well.
So while you're on that topic of amendments, maybe we should talk about this. I think you mentioned this to me when we've met earlier regarding amendments. And I think you indicated that, and I just want to get the committee to agree to this if they agree, that if we decide on amendments, you felt that in the past it was okay to vote without actually having the physical amendment from OLS before us. First of all, do I understand correctly what you said to me?
Yep. So in the past, if the committee through a work session on a bill, someone wants to say, oh, support this, but I'd want to remove lines, 4 and 5. We can discuss that, and I can tell the committee I'll have that amendment drafted. You can do a vote on that pending versus recessing a work session, waiting for an amendment to be drafted, and then come back. As long as the full committee is okay with that type of action, in the past it's worked for us, and then I'll just email the amendment to the full committee after the fact. It's just a more efficient way to operate.
So I'd like to make sure that we're all on board with that. That's okay.
And I'll tell you if there's one that I think it would be more appropriate to wait until something's drafted. Like if it's, if we want to, off the top of your head, say 7 different things to this amendment, I might say, well, there's enough change there that let me get something drafted and bring it back. But so, yeah.
As long as we're all in agreement, then that's great. Yes, Representative Muller, Popovich Muller.
Mueller is fine to save time. We don't want to save Popovich Mueller that often. But basically, look, there is also the fact that in this committee, we worked in a very collegial manner. And if we have a preliminary vote based on an amendment and we agree to it, and then the amendment comes out and somebody feels that they may want to reconsider, we will always be open to bringing back to the table and retaking the vote or whatever is needed to address those concerns. But having this process the way we had in the past worked very well for us, and I would suggest we continue with, the accommodations that we'll make for each other.
And that's one other thing to remember is nothing in this committee is final. Everything here is just a recommendation for a vote across the hall. So there will always be a chance to fix something or to reconsider even something we voted for here and change your mind across the way. That always exists. Any other questions to this point?
Representative Murray.
You learn.
I know, eventually. I've been practicing at home. You're not going to believe it, but I've actually been going through the list, and it's still, when I have to come up with it, I freeze. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, not a big deal. Wasn't the Department of Education undergoing an audit? And where are we on that? There was some issues of discussion about the Department of Education and an audit. Am I misremembering something, or?
I can speak to that if you want me to. I assume you're referring to performance audits. Okay. I'm on the Legislative Performance Audit Oversight Committee. I don't actually know if I'm still on it, but I've been on it, at least initially, at least for these past few years. There are two, one related to special education and one related to the education freedom accounts. The special education one, is not yet out, but the work is complete and they're in the final phase of getting it out. And the education freedom account one, I believe we just said, yes, go forward with the approved scoping statement that they provided last in December. So that's just essentially just beginning, is if I recall correctly.
Thank you.
If that helps.
Yeah.
I don't have a whole lot else planned, but I'm glad to do just any open discussion anyone has. This would be a good time. I can help answer that.
Representative Kelly. See, she has an easy name to remember.
It's money, that's the
Could I just ask for clarification about how the Education Funding Committee, the new committee, how those bills will mesh with finance, if it will come to this division, anything? And so will those bills all be first committee bills? And
Yes.
need
Short
to
answer is
go
yes.
through those deadlines?
So just because there's a new committee doesn't mean that this is the first time that funding bills, or let me put it a different way, bills that are going to cost money haven't gone through first committees. So every bill that might eventually cost money is noted already as a second committee bill because they have to finish that work up earlier. Those committees do, and they come to us. But yes, so in this case, hopefully, it's nice that they have a separate committee preceding ours. Maybe we can get the bills into a place where they'll more readily move through finance, as opposed to what has oftentimes happened in the past, and probably will still happen with, especially with other committees, is they look at themselves as, okay, we're just a policy committee. We don't really care if it's going to cost $1 bazillion. Let's go for it. It sounds like a great idea. I think that's the intent. And as Representative Weiler alluded to this morning, he's had conversations with the various committees to ask them to all take at least some consideration of costs associated with the bills that are coming through their committees in their thinking. Does that answer your question? If not, just repose it. I'm glad to.
I think so. I'm trying to mesh it to how we always, well, yeah. I know that sitting in the audience, I used to know that, things would go through first committees, but that they weren't particular to one subject area particularly. But this new committee will be dealing just with education funding. So I'm wondering how that meshes with this division.
Oh, it is still first committee, second committee situation.
Okay.
There'll be first committee bills. Their focus will be on the spending, which is great. But no, it'll still be the same process.
Okay.
They'll go to the first committee, and then they'll come to our committee, and we can do whatever we want with them, just as we have in the past. The hope in my mind, I'm one of those people, and this is another one who's sitting on that committee, and
Right.
I'm told the reason that we're doing this, wasn't exactly excited about it, I'll admit that, is that we hopefully can get the bills and so they'll flow more readily when they come to this group because we've been working with them. But yes, they'll come here and we can consider them just as we have in the past.
All right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Did you have a question?
Yeah,
Representative Murray?
Murray, yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
No, I knew the name now. I just-
Very good. Well, just, I think you sort of addressed it, but just that the potential exists that the recommendation coming from the policy committee will not mesh with the policy in this committee, that we still have to do our own work on that. And that just because they're recommending this doesn't mean that we automatically agree with that. There may be conflict between our focus on policy and what their focus on policy is. I expect that may not be unreasonable or unlikely.
No, that's totally correct. Representative Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say two things. One, I am excited about the double committee. I'm a glutton for punishment. Two, I completely agree with what Representative Murray said, which is that while we will try to make sure that the policy committee, at least that particular one, does look at costs, at the end of the day, because of both the timing of the process and the nature of the committee, they do not have the same view to the budget as a whole that we have here. So they may feel that taken in isolation, a policy makes sense, but then when we try to fit it into the bigger puzzle, it doesn't work. So it really doesn't change much. I think the one major beneficial impact, besides the whole workload thing for the education committee, is that hopefully we will get fewer bills that will come directly to us. So they will act as the first committee for all education funding bills, and then we'll be able to act just as the finance committee. We won't be asked to worry about policy and finance at the same time, which has always been difficult because that's not our core job. So the hope is that it will have multiple positive impacts. Time will tell.
Representative DeRay, do you have any thoughts, questions? Okay, all right. Anyone else? I was going to say, I've not
Thanks,
heard
Mr.
from
Chair.
Representative Hawkins.
Yeah, I've been
Phillips.
very
Please.
quiet today. So that's going to change, I guess, here. So I just wanted to say thank you in advance to Mr. Landrigan and his office for the guidance and help that they're going to provide us in the coming weeks. And just to recognize and reflect that it's been a very close working relationship with this committee. And we're just so thankful for, his intelligence and his patience sometimes with us. So thank you in advance for another season.
Representative Bean, did you want to add anything? You all set? I would I've said the same thing. I've enjoyed working with you so far, and I'm looking forward to a very close relationship going forward. And I guess if there's nothing else, can we just...
One thing I was just going to add, I forgot to say earlier. So I'll send you some links, helpful links of some documents that are out there you can familiarize yourself with, but also our website too. Anything that I hand out here, I'm going to post online to a separate Division 2 page. So
Do you all know where that is?
I'll send that link to everyone. So anything that is handed out here, we'll have it online. I'm also going to try to make an effort to get documents from agencies in advance of our meetings, and I will email them and post them online the day of. I'll try to email them to you the night before at least, and then I'll post them online ahead of our meeting. So that way maybe you could familiarize yourself with the documents. So when you're hearing from the agency, you're not seeing this stuff, reading it for the first time as they're testifying. And hopefully that's been helpful in the past, and hopefully that'll be helpful again this year.
And I'll just add, I'm the pain in the neck that insists on this. I really can't work with paper. So I do really want all the people to come before us to provide their documentation, hopefully the night before, or at least the day before. But at the very least before the meeting, because I only work off of the screen. So not that you have to work that way, but it's telling you how I operate.
And there will be a lot of paper for those of you who do recall, especially in this committee. I brought this as a prop. You all remember the ed funding spreadsheets. We'll have a bunch of those flying around at some point as well. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this year as well.
Anything else for the good of the committee, as my former chairman Edwards would always ask? Everybody good? All right, then I'll meeting adjourned at 1:38.
Thank you.